I'm Wendy Chung. I'm a pediatrician and medical geneticist at Columbia University. I have the pleasure of leading something called the Discover program, where we try and understand what are the causes for individuals who have perplexity of symptoms, of problems, and then to guide them after we find that diagnosis to being able to maintain their health and hopefully get them better. KIF1A is a rare genetic condition that often affects children and is unfortunately a neurodegenerative condition. That is, that parts of the brain, parts of the body are actually deteriorating over time. It's a condition that affects the brain, and it's the parts of the brain that connect to the body, like the eyes, the muscles, the nerves. And with that, children lose the ability, for instance, to see over time and lose the ability to walk, to talk, and unfortunately die of the condition. So this condition is genetic, and it might seem counterintuitive, but it's in the genes, but it's not always inherited from the parents. And in fact, many times this starts brand new with the child with the KIF1A. As a result of that, this is a gene, a particular protein. It's actually called a molecular motor, so it's the sort of motor that's going on train tracks within the brain cells to be able to deliver things to different parts of the brain cells. And individuals with this are born with a mistake in that particular gene, so that those train tracks, those trains aren't working and aren't able to have the delivery system for the different parts of the brain cells that keep them alive and make them work. KIF1A is a relatively new gene. We've only known about the particular gene and its association with a human disease for the last couple of years. Because of that, we're very early in terms of understanding how mistakes in that gene cause the problems that we do. So we're still in the early phases of discovery and understanding about how this all works. So we're still at the very early phase of understanding how KIF1A works and how its function is disrupted by changes or mutations in this gene. We've only known about the association with human diseases for the last 3 or 4 years, so we're early in this process. We do know that there are problems with, as I said, this molecular motor and the way that the motor works to be able to deliver things to the different parts of the brain cell. We don't exactly understand why, but particular mistakes in this are somehow gunking up the machinery. They're somehow not allowing those trains to work to carry their cargo, to carry the different parts of nutrients and other things in the brain cells that are needed. Exactly how this gunks that up and exactly what nutrients are not delivered, that's part of what we're still understanding, trying to understand and trying to get our heads around. KIF1A is just one of many, unfortunately, rare genetic conditions. I happen to be a doctor for children and individuals with rare genetic conditions, and my job is kind of to be their Sherpa, to be able to help them along this process, to be able to understand what club they're a member of, in other words, what their underlying genetic diagnosis is, and ultimately to help them with the care until we get to the point of a cure. In other words, to be able to keep them as strong and as healthy as possible, while at the same time working towards understanding what's causing their disease so we can come up with better treatments for that. For KIF1A personally, Susanna Rosen is actually the reason why I'm in this. Susanna came to me as a little girl who had this condition. Her parents are just incredibly dedicated individuals, and it was really because I fell in love with Susanna and wanted to be able to see that we could do something better for her. It's a tough condition because this is actually, as I said, a degenerative condition. It's something that gets worse over time. Because of that, I have a certain sense of urgency. We don't have forever for Susanna. I don't know exactly how long we have, but I know we don't have years and years and years. And so for this, when I think about all of the other conditions that we could worry about, that I could study, I have lots of wonderful patients and lots of wonderful families, but for some of them, I need to do something sooner rather than later, and KIF1A is one of those conditions. If we're going to do something to save Susanna and save the other kids out there that are like her, we don't have years and years, we don't have decades, we probably have 5 to 10 years to be able to come up with something to be able to really make a difference in her life. So this is still, as I said, a relatively rare condition, and I can't tell you for sure. I'm not a palm reader in terms of knowing exactly what Susanna's future holds or exactly how quickly it will progress. But we do know that we've had other children that have died even within their first year of life of this condition. We've had other individuals where it's been over a course of 10 or 20 years, but we don't have decades for this. It is something that's marching right ahead. Within this particular process, we do know that it degenerates, and it's likely that as we lose brain cells, we can't get them back. That this is a one-way street in terms of how we can do this. That damage, in other words, is irreversible. So we want to be able to figure out how to be able to intervene as early in that process as possible so that we can prevent that degeneration, so that we can preserve the health of those brain cells, so that we can keep them alive and we can keep that long-term function. So with this, to me, every day matters. Every day that we don't come up with a better treatment, that we don't come up with something to be able to keep those cells alive, to keep the brain alive, we lose precious cells. And so as we're doing this, it's a ticking clock in the back of my head, in the back of the head of all the families, because we do know that we have a window of opportunity that I hope is something like 5 to 10 years in terms of from the time a child is diagnosed until we can be able to really stabilize this and give them meaningful life. But every day matters, and that's why we're working so hard to be able to come up with a cure for this. KIF1A is one particular genetic disease. I'm sure there are many more children out there than we know of because many doctors don't realize what this is. They don't diagnose it. They're not familiar with it. But there are other related conditions to KIF1A. So even though it in and of itself is one condition, it's a member of other conditions that are related that also have problems with these molecular motors, that have problems with the train tracks, that have problems in terms of being able to keep brain cells alive. And so by coming up with a treatment for KIF1A, it's very likely that whatever we learn about that process, by whatever we learn to keep those brain cells healthy and alive, is actually going to be applicable to other related conditions. So as we're doing this, we're not just doing it for Susanna and members of her club, but hopefully we're doing it for a lot of other children, a lot of other adults as well.